Good afternoon, and thank you for joining the Northern Virginia Technology Council for our virtual Masters of Leadership in Tech series, a new season of Leaders event. Please welcome NVTC's President and CEO, Jennifer Taylor.
Good afternoon. I'm delighted to welcome you to today's Masters of Leadership in Tech event, featuring the Chief Government Affairs and Public Policy Officer for BlackBerry, Marjorie Dickman. It was so nice to see many of you in the social lounge networking before the program started, and I hope to see many of you there after the program. By way of background, NVTC is your trade association representing the Greater Washington Region's tech community. Our mission is to connect, educate, and advocate for our members to advance a thriving tech ecosystem where we live and work. The Masters of Leadership in Tech series is made possible by our sponsors, the Consumer Technology Association, our signature platinum sponsor, Appian, Attain Partners, Mantech, and Virginia Tech, our platinum sponsors, our silver sponsors, CNSI and Uninet, and our PR and marketing advisor, the Merit Group, as well as our media partners, iHeartMedia, Scoop News, and Washington Technology. Thank you all for your support. And we also want to give a special thank you to our business partners and academic partners. Their support enables us to provide content and programming throughout the year. And they are Booz Allen Hamilton, CIT, the Center for Innovative Technology, the Consumer Technology Association, Dell Tech, Dominion Energy, Mason University, Innova, KPMG, Maximus, Microsoft, Nobless, Northrop Grumman, PenFed Credit Union, Pillsbury, PNC, SAIC, Venable, Verizon, Virginia Tech, and our policy advisor, Hunton Andrews Kurth. Thank you for all of your support. We really appreciate each and every one of you. Now, I would like to introduce Jackie Black, the Director of Strategic Alliances from the Consumer Technology Association, who will now introduce our speaker. Jackie?
Thank you, Jennifer, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm excited to join NVCT today on behalf of CTA. CTA is North America's largest tech trade association representing leading innovators from startups to global brands. CTA owns and produces CES, the most influential tech event in the world. I lead CTA's Future of Work initiatives, which help the tech industry close the nation's skills gap, grow the number of high-skilled jobs, and invest in creating a fully equipped, diverse workforce. Even with the workforce disruption from the pandemic, tech companies large and small need more employees with technical skills. We're helping companies overcome challenges in finding and retaining qualified talent. And we're engaging with lawmakers at all levels of government to spotlight where and how America can reskill and upskill our workforce. CTA's 21st Century Workforce Council is a forum for business executives at any level to share best practices and address challenges to prepare the workforce for jobs of the future. And the CTA Apprenticeship Coalition is teaching tech companies how to leverage apprenticeship programs to cultivate and retain talent. Our team also works with the Congressional Future of Work Caucus to host briefings and events educating Capitol Hill on the American workforce landscape. Getting people back to work and equipped with in-demand skills is one of the most important undertakings for our nation, and CTA and our member companies are leading the way. You can visit cta.tech/futureofwork to learn more. It is now my privilege and honor to introduce today's distinguished speaker and our moderator. Marjorie Dickman is BlackBerry's first Government Affairs and Public Policy Officer, reporting directly to the Executive Chairman and CEO. As Corporate Officer and member of the Executive Leadership Team, she represents the future of the new BlackBerry. Hired in March 2020, she jumped into her new role during the pandemic, quickly opening the company's Washington office and building BlackBerry's new global government affairs and public policy organization from scratch, including both government relations and technical standards teams. Leveraging 23 years of legislative, regulatory, and public policy expertise, she is leading a high-performing and diverse organization across the US, Canada, Europe, Middle East, and Africa, and the UK. Prior to BlackBerry, Marjorie enjoyed a highly successful 16-year career at Intel Corporation. Our moderator today is Tiffany Moore. Tiffany serves as our Senior Vice President of Political and Industry Affairs at CTA. Her role includes overseeing CTA's U.S. jobs and diversity and inclusion initiatives. She also leads our advocacy efforts on Capitol Hill on issues including tech policy, strategic immigration, reform, and trade. Please welcome Marjorie Dickman and Tiffany Moore.
Thank you so much, Jackie, for that introduction. And Marjorie, welcome. A special thank you to NVTC for bringing us all together. This will be a great conversation. And I couldn't help when we were talking about doing this. I had to dig into my drawer, and I found this wonderful device that I could never let go of. And so that's what people think about when they think about BlackBerry. It's not quite the same now. So can you tell us about BlackBerry and why BlackBerry and why now?
Absolutely. And thank you, Tiffany. First, it's great to be here with you, Tiffany, today. And thank you to NVTC for hosting the Masters of Leadership program, as well as Platinum Signature sponsor CTA and the other sponsors and the many partners and all of you out there in the ether joining us today. So yes, BlackBerry, time flies. It's actually my 1-year anniversary, Tiffany. I joined BlackBerry last March, as Jackie mentioned, as our first Chief Government Affairs and Public Policy Officer, right at the onset of COVID, in fact. And, you know, I'll tell you, when first approached by the executive search firm about the position, like many of you, my frame of reference for BlackBerry was, like Tiffany's phone, the trusted mobile device company. And if I'm going to be 100% honest with you, I wasn't even aware that the company still existed. I was very sad when my BlackBerry got, taken away many years ago. But I can attest today that BlackBerry does indeed still exist and has successfully transitioned its trusted brand in the device space to a trust brand for world-leading AI-driven security software and services. In short, we're now a global cybersecurity company. So I'll share with you some data points when I was being introduced to the new BlackBerry, as Jackie mentioned, that blew this nerd slash tech nerd slash policy wonk's mind as I learned about BlackBerry. So our technology actually secures over 500 million IoT endpoints worldwide, including 175 million cars and 61% of electric vehicles. Our customers include all 7 of the G7 governments and 18 of the G20. 77% of Fortune 500 financial services companies, 9 of the 10 largest automakers, so we're talking connected, automated, and electric vehicles, as well as sectors including defense, transportation, smart mobility, critical communications and first responders, utilities and manufacturing, and healthcare and professional services.
Wow, that's impressive. And, you know, I've known you for years. You have a very successful career at Intel. We work closely together. So, indeed. You know, was that part of your decision? I mean, those are impressive stats as you thought about transitioning from an incredible career at Intel.
Thank you. And you're making me blush a little here. But yes, and you're right. You and I have known each other for so many years. We've even traveled the world together a couple times. It's a great question. So when approached by the executive recruiter, right, I was at this 16-year career at Intel. I wasn't looking for a new opportunity. I was leading global government affairs for 2 of Intel's most high-profile and disruptive businesses at the time, Internet of Things, intelligent endpoints. You can hear the link to BlackBerry here, and automated driving or self-driving cars. And I was managing a very talented team across the US, EMEA, China, and Japan. But here's the linchpin: a very well orchestrated sit down by a very smart executive recruiter with BlackBerry CEO and executive chairman John Chen at a technology conference we were both attending was a game changer. what appealed to me about BlackBerry was the company's transformation since 2014 into a security software and services company, as well as its visionary leadership. I connected with John Chen's vision and transparent leadership style, as well as, and Tiffany, you know this about me, his dry sense of humor. Our CEO, John, is a transformative leader. And what's important, what really struck a chord with me is he deeply values the government affairs and public policy function, as evidenced by his decision to put the government affairs and public policy org in the C-suite and work directly to him. And he really wanted someone for this leadership role with a love of business, which is something I've just always had, and a deep understanding of how government affairs, partnering with sales, market, engineering, can collaboratively enable business growth. John also recognizes the importance of BlackBerry having a voice in legislative and the regulatory process. So in short, the more I learned about his vision for BlackBerry as a cybersecurity company and the depth and breadth of this role, the more excited I became about joining the new BlackBerry as its first Chief Government Affairs and Public Policy Officer.
That's wonderful. And I can't say enough about purpose-driven CEOs, particularly over the last couple of years. The voices of CEOs have become so important in kind of our public discourse on a broad number of issues. So I completely get that, particularly with John's vision. But also you mentioned something that was very important, and to have kind of in the C-suite a CEO that's driven, that understands government affairs, that really it is not kind of on the side. It's something that is important business. So, you have this wonderful, driven, transformational CEO who is looking at changing BlackBerry. I definitely know that was important. What other things kind of drove you to make that change?
Sure, it's a great question, and it kind of goes to the heart of who I am. This new BlackBerry, since 2014, had never had a government affairs and public policy organization, and I've always liked the challenge of building something from nothing. Maybe that's why, as a kid, I was a big Lego and erector set fan in the 1970s. I guess. I'm aging myself here. But BlackBerry presented an opportunity similar to what I'd done at Intel in launching Intel's global IoT and automated driving government affairs practices from scratch at the same time as we launched the businesses. So this was an opportunity to really do that again in an increasingly critical policy area in which I was deeply interested, not only personally, but for the country, namely the cybersecurity of our nation and our allies. It was the opportunity to leverage my enterprise IoT expertise to build something from scratch in this disruptive technology space, focus on securing IoT endpoints across all the enterprise sectors I mentioned earlier, and importantly, including connected and automated vehicles, which is something I've been deeply engaged in at Intel for a decade.
Wow, that's wonderful. So tell us more about the role. I mean, you are Chief Public Policy Officer. What does that entail, and what kind of components does that include?
That's a great question. So my role, as you know, it's a significant one within BlackBerry. In addition to directly reporting to our CEO, I serve as a member of our small global executive leadership team, and as Jackie mentioned, as a corporate officer. And as the leader of BlackBerry's new government affairs and public policy organization, and Jackie mentioned this earlier as well, and it appealed to me. I oversee both our government relations team and our technical standards team. This org structure, combining GR and technical experts under one umbrella, as you know, Tiffany, it's quite unique in tech. and in most industries, right? And one that both John, our CEO, and I strongly support, given the synergies between government relations and technical standards. And you see that within CTA, right? You have government relations and then you have technical standards. And how many times as government relations experts do we seek the input of internal technical experts? And then vice versa, as technical standards experts, do we see advice of internal GR experts? So I thought it was brilliant to have government relations and technical standards on the same team. In my mind, this is a 1 + 1 = 3 organizational structure. My GR and technical standards staff collaborate daily, and they enjoy doing so. They're making each other and BlackBerry smarter, and very importantly, they're increasing our substantive value add in conversations, whether it be with governments, trade associations like CTA, standards bodies, think tanks, as well as our customers. And in addition to overseeing this uniquely comprised, organization, the role also energized me as an opportunity to leverage my strong interest in forging bipartisan partnerships on innovative and complex tech policy issues, many of the issues that CTA deals with, right, on a daily basis, and to deliver results that enable business growth. Again, going back to that, John was looking for someone who really had a love of business. And I'd say, just to, the last part of this, your question is, most importantly, I'm blessed with amazing staff on both the GR and the standards team, and look forward to adding talented and entrepreneurial policy and standards team experts to the team this year.
Excellent. And so you talked a little bit about this, and I look forward to kind of digging a little deeper. All of our entire world changed a year ago, right? I can remember being in office, and then all of a sudden, like a light switch, we were all gone. It changes so much. Changes so much with the existing team. So here you are, you're starting at BlackBerry, and you have to build a team. So, in the middle of a global pandemic, you're like, so I would love to, you could tell us, like, how do you pull together a team and develop and execute an agenda, and you're just kind of like day one, just starting?
That's a fantastic question. Yeah, everything that, you think in your head and you prepare for, your strategy and everything, it just immediately changes. So yes, I joined BlackBerry on March the 2nd, 2020, less than a week before the COVID cases were reported in DC on March the 7th. And then we had the stay-at-home orders that were implemented soon thereafter. So in a few words, my first year has been thrilling, challenging, and very, very virtual. And that includes the hiring, as has everyone's listening here today. It required an open mind, adaptability, all these things that you learn throughout your career. And most importantly, comfort making decisions amidst ambiguity. Indeed, who among us has lobbied or done any of our jobs during a pandemic before? I quickly, had to, and even, enjoy embracing this new business normal, knowing that flexibility and a pro-learning mindset would be essential to BlackBerry's and to my org success.
Wow. So had you met any of your colleagues? Were there any in-person introductions? How did that work?
Such a good question, Tiffany. Most leaders, they start, their new job by visiting the company's global offices, meeting employees, and engaging in listening tours to understand business priorities and corporate culture. When you jump into a new role at the onset of COVID, and was, as you mentioned, that critical inflection point for the nation and the world. So this meant only 2 weeks of in-person meetings prior to COVID lockdowns. And while I'm based in DC, I also have an office at BlackBerry's Silicon Valley site where our CEO and many of my colleagues sit. So I spent the first week on the job in my Silicon Valley office, so that's the week of March the 2nd. So which reflection was incredibly fortunate. I did have the opportunity to meet a good handful of colleagues. Flew back to DC, spent the second week on the job back in DC. And we knew that the COVID lockdowns were coming very quickly. This is the week of March the 9th. So on the organizational front, this meant quickly finding DC office space for BlackBerry that week in a matter of days. And this is where, 27 years, aging myself again, of relationships in Washington came in handy, with friends who graciously pointed me in the right direction to accelerate this process as we really raced against time before the stay-at-home order took effect. As well as many colleagues at BlackBerry, including our CEO, who supported this DC office space process in the months thereafter to ensure success. Of course, I've only been in that office once for 2 hours thus far this year to do a fireplace chat with a congressman. So I look forward to, as we all do, getting back to our offices.
Well, so you got office space, but now you got to build a team. So this was an idea for, an important role the CEO was personally involved in, but you can't do it by yourself. And again, it's the new endeavor for BlackBerry. So how do you build a team in the middle of a pandemic? How did you go about that?
Yeah. Very interesting. In short, March 2020 and thereafter was a time of literally building the plane while flying it. For example, and you'll remember this, engaging with the Hill on the CARES Act in my first weeks at BlackBerry, which passed on March the 27th of last year. Well, so as to your question, building a new organization. So part of building this new organization included revising the charter for our global standards teams. This team already existed within BlackBerry, but they were being moved my org. So it was rewriting that charter for the standards team to better align with the new BlackBerry's cybersecurity roadmap, and then welcoming and integrating this team to their new home. And this is a global team, of course, all now working at home, into their new org at BlackBerry. Then on the government affairs side, starting to conservatively due to COVID, because we didn't know last March, right? How long is this going to last? Mm-hmm. So conservatively hiring a high-performing and globally diverse government relations team from the ground up. Over the past year, I started to build our GR team across the US, Canada, EMEA, and the UK. And the team, hiring processes take a while, especially virtually. So the team, they just started joining in September through January. But it's phenomenal to have these experts on board. And they are now strategically introducing BlackBerry's cybersecurity voice to legislative and regulatory conversations. So it's been an incredibly rewarding year. And now, thank goodness, in September, with some amazing GR and technical standards experts on board. And I'm excited about what's ahead, for this year. We continue to grow the org with additional extraordinary GR and technical standards experts.
So now you've got a mandate from your CEO. You've met your colleagues. You've built a team, and you get shuffled a new deck here in Washington. You've got a new Congress. You got a new president.
Yes.
So that in and of itself is a challenge. But what are you focused on? What are your priorities? What are you trying to get done? And how do you all contribute to the debate here in Washington? Not just in Washington, but since we're here in the U.S., what are your priorities here?
Sure. Another great question. as the pandemic, as you mentioned, of course, influenced many policy priorities since last March. You know, Washington and every government around the world was facing a new normal. And BlackBerry had a responsibility to quickly refocus too. Indeed, almost all public policy shifted the pandemic and COVID relief legislation from last March's CARES Act to this March's American Rescue Plan Act. So the question for BlackBerry quickly became, how do we lend our cybersecurity expertise to help Congress and the administration implement policies that address this new normal? This meant helping the US government, as well as governments and businesses around the world, think through policies that will bolster enterprise security in this new work from home environment of unprecedented VPN and video meetings. And this continues to be a public policy priority for BlackBerry, with governments and businesses still experiencing a sharp increase in cyber threats since the onset of COVID. In recent months, we've all witnessed multiple wide-scale cyber incidents. The two most well-known being, of course, first, the SolarWinds hack that compromised at least 9 federal agencies and numerous private businesses. And second, the hack of Microsoft's Exchange's email service that impacted thousands of organizations. But is BlackBerry's threat report, which we published last month, noted there are many more cyber attacks over the last year that have not received as much attention.
Well, thank you for focusing on this, because, you know, all of us picked up our laptops, bought a whole bunch of new devices online for microphones and video. I've got a whole setup here. You think but I'm my own IT department. Actually, no, we have an amazing IT department at CTA, but we're doing a lot of it ourselves. And with that comes so many cyber challenges. And we're not just talking about business, but like you said, government. Like, you know, you got government working from home off of things, you know, devices that may or may not be secure, and kind of those connection points. So as you're looking at the Congress specifically, what are those cybersecurity priorities that you're focused on, that you're trying to move the needle on?
Yeah, you're so right. And, you know, being your own IT person, we have fabulous IT people as well. I can't speak as highly enough about them, but they send you, you know, you have your whole setup at home. And I still have some of it, I'll admit to you, I haven't set up because I'm not quite sure how to do it. But yes, so focusing this Congress, so to curb these cybersecurity vulnerabilities that we've been seeing increasingly by hostile nation states and related actors, BlackBerry is resolute on advocating for strong cybersecurity policies and increased public-private partnerships, as well as investment in, and CTA sent a letter about this just this week, about long overdue IT modernization across the government to protect our national security. So I'll share with you 3 top of mind policy priorities. First, the first one being modernization and security of technology at the federal, state, and even local government levels. The SolarWinds and Microsoft hacks underscore the cruciality of rapidly modernizing America's IT and hardening security gaps. This requires meaningful investment by the federal government, the recent America Rescue Plan Act being an initial step in the right direction, with cyber funding for the Technology Modernization Fund, CISA, and the U.S. Digital Service. But much more is needed to protect national security. You know, as we think about it, just as China tends to leapfrog global competition, for example, with 5G and 6G, with focused investment in future technology, we in the US must do that here, investing heavily now in advancing AI-driven security and other leading-edge cybersecurity solutions and R&D. This is how we jump ahead to protect America. Indeed, much of the race has moved, as we know, from the physical battleground to cyberspace, and America must lead in cyberspace security. Second priority, we agree with President Biden and DHS CISA that also requires strengthening relationships between the public and private sector, where government and industry are working together to combat these increasingly complex cyber threats in our ever more connected world. BlackBerry will continue to work with Congress, the administration, and our industry colleagues on policies to enhance robust security requirements across the enterprise to protect government, critical infrastructure, businesses, and consumers, as well as strengthen public-private partnerships. And the third example I'll give of where we're focusing this Congress is bolstering an all-of-government national cybersecurity strategy. There were two bipartisan bills that passed in December that were a great start: the IoT Cybersecurity Improvement Act and the Digit Act. In fact, when I was at Intel, my team worked on the Digit Act with Senators, bipartisan bill with Senators Fisher, Booker, Gardner, and Schatz. Since the bill's first introduction in 2016, I think in 2016 it was actually, it was Kelly Ayotte was on that when she was still in Congress. So 5 years later, the bill finally gets passed. This Congress, BlackBerry is especially focused on heightened cybersecurity requirements for the enterprise and industrial IoT. What I mean by that, so think governments, manufacturing, utilities, critical infrastructure, our financial system, in other sectors where a cyber attack could be pervasive and disastrous to America's economic and social fabric. And just as BlackBerry supported many of the U.S. Cyberspace Solarium Commission proposals in the FY21 NDAA, like the Cyber Director, we'll continue to advocate CSC and other proposals that elevate America's cybersecurity posture. Of course, these proposals, who knows when, what legislative vehicle, they use, but these could be realized in the FY22 NDAA, an infrastructure package, possibly standalone bills. Well,
everyone's talking about infrastructure. It's been the running joke in Washington that, for the last several years, it's infrastructure week. But a lot of the focus on the physical infrastructure. And one thing that CTA has been focused on, particularly with our member companies, is the digital infrastructure, particularly now with COVID, and how those are intertwined. You can't have one without the other, and you need to be very intentional on how you proceed on digital infrastructure. Particularly when you think about smart mobility and connected digital infrastructure. BlackBerry has a role to play. How do you all envision that role as we think about our digital infrastructure?
You hit on a great point. Smart mobility and connected digital infrastructure must be key priorities for the U.S. government, this Congress. Indeed, as we think about the connected car, it's a data center on wheels, with onboard computers performing everything from critical system functions to navigation and infotainment. As noted earlier, BlackBerry's security and safety certified technology is embedded in over 175 vehicles and 61% of EVs worldwide. So we advocate policies that support heightened cyber requirements for connected, automated, and electric vehicles, as well as for the nation's transportation infrastructure, which is increasingly becoming connected in our increasingly connected world. While these innovations deliver a plethora of benefits to both the commercial and consumer transportation and mobility sectors, benefits which can't be, understated, they also introduce increased susceptibility to cyber attacks, from simple data theft to very advanced system hijacking, braking, steering, or even engine operations. So this makes heightened cybersecurity standards more critical now than ever.
So another conversation that we're having in Washington and across the country is U.S. competitiveness. And depending on who you ask on any different levels of emerging tech, we're winning, we're losing. So two-part questions. particularly when we think about transportation, urban mobility, and electric vehicle innovation. One, how does the US compete, and more importantly, how do we win?
Great question. So, while America historically has been a world leader in transportation innovation, as you mentioned, and it's a great point, global competition is on the rise. A couple of things that struck me, I'll give you 3 examples. Our largest cities like Chicago and New York rank behind Singapore, Paris, Hong Kong, London, Madrid, and Moscow in urban mobility, according to McKinsey. And secondly, while European countries are racing ahead, the US ranks 17th among countries with the highest share of EV new car sales. That's a Statista report from last year. The third is competitively, China is by far the biggest EV market, with around 1.2 million EVs sold in 2019. And thinking about that competitively from a US perspective, that's 4 times the number of EVs sold in the US. And again, that's a McKinsey study from last year. So BlackBerry thinks about, so how do we win? Which was your question. So BlackBerry supports public policies that ensure the safety, security, and reliability of embedded systems across the transportation network, with a strong focus on heightening vehicle and transportation infrastructure cybersecurity in order to prevent any threat risks out there from materializing. Safe and secure transportation mobility infrastructure for the country, reduce emissions, enhance public safety, and economic development should be fundamental bipartisan issues. Government and industry working together as we emerge from the pandemic, we can rebuild a thriving economy based on radical public policy solutions to drive economic growth, spur innovation, and create jobs. That's how we win. So specifically, I'll give you a couple examples of what BlackBerry is advocating. You say it's been infrastructure, the joke in Washington is it's been infrastructure week every week for the last goodness knows how many years, right? So BlackBerry supports an infrastructure package that, in addition to traditional infrastructure like roads and bridges, supports digital infrastructure and that includes securing America's transportation network. With proper investment and incentives, this is how we win. America can re-solidify itself as the global leader in transportation and mobility and innovation. As the White House and Congress, they're contemplating a much needed Build Back Better infrastructure package, global competitiveness and national security, they have to be top of mind. With respect to go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No worries. So, with respect to, investment and incentives in technology innovation, including in smart transportation and infrastructure and the security and safety of electric, connected and automated vehicles, all of these will help revitalize our economy post-COVID, create new jobs, and regain global leadership. BlackBerry also supports, and I know CTA supports this as well, accelerating and the development and deployment of connected, automated, and electric vehicles. How do we, what are the right regulations to remove, and do we need new regulations in order to expedite this? And finally, specifically with respect to EVs, I mentioned before, China's 4 times ahead of us on, the sale of EVs. There's an example found in a not much talked about bill, but it's HR 806 that was introduced by Representative Dingell. It's a bipartisan piece of legislation called the Clean Energy and Sustainability Accelerator Act. And there's a provision in this act that would support exploration by this Clean Energy and Sustainability Accelerator of a no to low interest program for schools, metropolitan planning organizations, and nonprofits which are seeking long-term financing for zero emissions vehicle fleets and related transportation infrastructure.
Wonderful, thank you. We've got a lot to do, a lot of work to do, but I'm glad to see that you all, that BlackBerry and in partnership with CTA, we can help drive that agenda. One question for you: it is Women's History Month, and while there's so much focus on history, let's talk about modern history. You are making modern women's history. You are a corporate officer in the C-suite for an incredible company. As we look at the next generation of women leaders, based on your incredible experience, kind of what advice do you have so they in turn can make history of their own?
Sure, and it's great to be here with you, Dee, on on Women's History Month. You yourself are just an incredible leader in Washington as well. So thank you. So there are many lessons, that I've learned in, almost a 23-year career in Washington. First, be confident in your capabilities. Something I wish I had personally learned at a younger age. I am still my own hardest critic, which lights a fire under me every day. I am self-motivated. Be your own hardest critic, but be fair to yourself. Most women, including me, forget the be fair to yourself part. And it's very important. Second, it's okay to speak your mind. As a woman, directness, assertiveness, it's all okay. Men do it all the time and they don't apologize for it. Or they ask to. In many situations, unfortunately, we women are still judged for our decisiveness, whereas men are praised for it. Yet the irony being, right, that I never would have reached to where I am in my career without speaking up. Strong men and women respect it. And I'll share a little bit of a story with you. So the most memorable conversation I had with my prior CEO was a phone call preparing him for a meeting at, of all things, CES. And there were 4 people on the call: the CEO, 2 male colleagues, and me. One of the male colleagues kept talking over me. And he wasn't just talking over me, but he was literally repeating what I was saying. Oh. Yes, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
We've all been there.
We've been there, right? And our CEO interjected and said, "I'm sorry, Marjorie, were you saying something?" At which point I almost fell off my chair.
I love it.
Yeah, he probably doesn't even remember this, but I never forget it. And I've shared that with many of my mentees. Third, don't diminish yourself. I was, one of those, always strive for excellence, straight A students, the 3-letter varsity athlete, student government, friend with everyone kind of kids. But I was also very sensitive. And I was cognizant at a young age, not everyone was like this, nor did they want to be like this, right? So I developed a tendency at a young age to use self-deprecating humor to set a room at ease. And that extended into my career. I used this self-deprecating humor for many years. But a very smart person pointed out to me later in my career that the handful of people, the people who know me in the room, they know I'm kidding. But there's a handful of people in the room who don't know me, and they may take that self-deprecation seriously. So the lesson here being, humor is an excellent asset in any career, tech or otherwise, when used appropriately, especially to lighten tense situations. But you need not diminish yourself, ladies, to inject levity.
I love it. And thank you for I've witnessed it, your tenacity and your strong voice. So I would say keep it up, but you're going, like you're there. So I love it. And those are real tangible lessons and tips for women leaders. But we're not just a leader of women. We are the leader of men and women. And so I oftentimes get, asked, and people seek counsel, not just women, but men too. And so when you think of the generation of technology leaders, particularly given the world today, what is your advice to both women and men?
Great. It's such a good question because, right, our mentees and the people that do us for advice aren't just women. They're men as well. And so I'll give 3 examples again here. First, and this is first and foremost, there's no substitute for hard work and substance. Do your homework. Know why you're in a meeting and what you're talking about. The quality of your work ultimately will speak for itself and is key to building one's reputation. Getting a meeting in a town like DC, it's only the first step. It can be challenging, but it is only the first step. The most important part happens when that door opens. We must have something substantive to say. If you add value to a meeting, you'll make a positive impression and you'll position yourself as a trusted advisor. As my staff would readily share with you, I'm impressed with results, not the number of meetings. So one meeting that delivers a result is much more impressive to me than 20 meetings and coffees where no result yet. For results, and it's about results and respect for people's time. Both of these matter. So with time, use yours and use others wisely, and people will respect you for that. Second, honesty and integrity are irreplaceable. While someone may not like what you're saying, and this happens to all of us in tech, right, or in any other career, most people respect the truth. So be upfront with both good news as well as bad news. This is critical to building a long-term trusted reputation. In some of the hardest negotiations of my career, we reached a mutually acceptable outcome because we trusted that each other was being authentic and that neither of us was playing games. That's respect. Third, mentors. Mentors are important. I learned this later in my career. Well, I've even eagerly mentored others for years. People ask for help. I'm more than willing to, help, advise, help them in their careers. I didn't take the time to focus on a mentor myself until later in my career. Mentors, these are trusted confidants. They know who you are as a person at the core. They care about your career and, very importantly, honest with you. I have 2 mentors who I trust implicitly. They brainstorm with me, they offer advice, and they tell me the truth. They celebrate the highs, and when I'm facing adversity, they remind me who I am at the core of myself. I'm a better mentor to others now because of them. And the two of you who are these mentors, I think you might be out there today. That I'm talking about you. So thank you.
I love it. I can't say enough about having a personal and professional board of directors. That's what I call them. And, I often say, they're not all women. They're not African-American. They're men. There's so many people who are part of that board of directors that make you such a better person. Wanted to get to some questions that we have. And this is actually, you talked a little bit about this, but I would love for you to explain. So the question is, we have learned so much about BlackBerry, your priorities, your career. What is something people do not know about you? You talked a little bit about your one, I love your humor. But what's something that we don't know about you?
Okay, that is a fantastic question, and I'm going to share. I'll share a little bit about my growing up. So people know I'm a policy wonk, perhaps even a policy nerd. But they're often surprised to hear that I am also naturally very shy and introverted. Throughout my career, I've always focused more on the work than the spotlight or the credit. And interestingly, though, my childhood hero was not shy. As a kid growing up in Baltimore, my hero, in addition to my two very strong grandmothers, was Oprah Winfrey. This was long before the Oprah show, you get a car, you get a car, you get a car. So this was way back when she anchored the local news in a local syndicated talk show in Baltimore. I loved watching her. She was authentic, motivated, and she seemed to wear her heart on her sleeve. All characteristics which resonated with me, yet she was clearly an extrovert and I was painfully shy. I even minored in, I had this Oprah-like dream in the back of my head when I was in college. I even minored in film and video as an undergraduate dude. But then I spent a summer in Washington as part of my public policy major back in 1992. I was interning with a group of TV stations that covered DC. And again, right, so I'm doing the TV thing and, thinking about the Oprah, Oprah dream. But I fell in love with public policy in the political world in that summer of 1992. And the rest, for this introvert, as they say, is history.
Wow, that is impressive. And I think we have pretty much had a masterclass on tips and important things for us to know as leaders, but particularly, as we evolve in our careers. So I can't say enough. But just, I'm looking at some of the live chat, and what you're saying is resonating with people. It's results, tenacity. But you talked a lot about transparency and integrity. It's so important, and particularly in the distributed work environment. So
yeah,
appreciate all of those tips and just your contributions. What, as you think of the new BlackBerry that you are a key part of, what are you most excited about?
I am most excited about, first, the cybersecurity mission. And, it interests me personally. It was something that I was, engaged in at Intel across, all IoT sectors. But right now we're at a time for our country where cybersecurity and improving our cybersecurity is so important. And so I'd say that, as well as, my team. It's always about the team, right? It's you can't do this on your own. You have a fantastic team, and it makes all the difference in the world. And I'm excited about adding to that team in the next year, both on the government relations side and the technical standards side.
Excellent. And I think we have one final question, and it's as we get to new normal, things definitely will not get back to normal. And we think about, what's next. What are you most excited about returning to? I can say, for me, once with the scenes out there and people getting vaccinated, I can't wait to see my family and the personal connection with friends. But yeah, what are you looking forward to as we get back to this new normal, as we wrap it up?
Many of those same things. I mean, there's some family I've been in well over a year. Just can't wait to give them hugs. And then on the professional front, getting back into the office. There's certain things that I think we miss when collaboratively, and innovatively when we're not in an office with each other, right? We don't see each other when we're going to get coffee, and you might just say, hey, I've had this idea. Can you brainstorm this for a second with me? Whereas it's just not going to naturally happen. You have to set up a phone call, or you have to, in this virtual world. So it's people on both fronts. It's personally, family, just, hugs, and, less of this virtual hug, and, more of this just, being together. My family has a vacation that we've planned for December, knock on wood, where we're going to celebrate all of these things that we as a larger family, for the last year haven't been able to celebrate together. The birthdays, the anniversaries, so many things. And then just back in the office, like I said, I've only been, for 2 hours. And, we found that new DC office, and I'm so excited about it. And now it's been built out, but I've spent 2 hours there. So I'm really excited to get back into the office. My staff have been into the office because, they only started in September to January. So, and getting them in there and watching, having them, collaborate together in person. So those are the things I'm excited for.
And just to underscore your point, just seeing those organic conversations that happen in the office are important, and particularly, and even if you think about advocacy, I often say not what the meeting's about, it's the, by the way conversations and the meetings in the halls with staffers that you happen to see that are so important that we're missing right about now. But I want to say thank you, Marjorie, for this conversation. I've known you for years, but I learned so much about you and learned something from you, lots of things from you. So thank you. And thank you to the NVTC, and it's been great to partner with them on this. So thank you again for being this distinguished guest and for continuing to blaze trails.
Thank you, Tiffany. This has been so much fun.
Thank you, Tiffany and Marjorie, for that fascinating discussion, and thank you for attending today's virtual event. Please stay and network with your fellow attendees in the social lounge. I hope to see you at a future NVTC event, and stay safe and healthy, and have a great rest of